How's it going? Moz here, welcome to Respawn. Now, Weird West is actually a gaming debut for Arkane Studios. They're a newly formed studio that's been founded by the former founder of Arkane Studios, and even though this isn't a first-person shooter, you can still see it being open to experimentation and that sense of freedom when you're given moral dilemmas that are often presenting themselves that we always saw in Prey and Dishonored. Now, Weird West is a twin-stick isometric western shooter with a heavy angle on dark magic and fantasy. The story caught my attention from the start, but Arkane Studios have described this as an immersive sim, and I just can't get on board with that. I don't think I've ever been immersed in an isometric game, to be honest. Maybe that's just me not having a vivid enough imagination, but I find that first person and third person games are so much more immersive. Disco Elysium was probably the one isometric game I've actually felt immersed in, and that was mainly down to the incredible narrative and voice acting. Unfortunately, Weird West is a text skipper with only the narrative being voiced, and that always falls foul of breaking immersion in my opinion, just staring at some dirty scruff bag from the West waiting for them to speak.
Say something!
I decided to stop showering.
I think fully voiced characters would have changed the feel of this game dramatically, but that still doesn't mean it isn't enjoyable in a gameplay sense, just not exactly immersive in a narrative sense. This was apparent right from the start, because reading about your son being murdered in some weird robotic gibberish doesn't quite have the same immersive punch as an animated, fully voiced and emotionally distraught character would. We play as the conscience of a very unfortunate individual who's being tortured by some mysterious cult and having their mind transferred to 5 very mismatched bodies, and we start off as a bounty hunter who's searching for her kidnapped husband after her son has been murdered, and then we move on to 5 other characters who can play with the same items and the same weapons, but each having unique abilities. Each of the characters' story is within a single chapter, and the choices made with each character will have a knock-on effect, so the following characters will have to deal with the consequences of previous characters' actions. As well as the bounty hunter, we play as an archer, a preacher, a werewolf, and a pig man. And to be honest, I'm not always a big fan of twin-stick shooters. Now, I don't actually have anything against them, but they just don't resonate with me as well as a first or third person shooter does. But Weird West has some seriously satisfying bullet time action, some player animations that are awesome, and the odd enemy animation that's not so awesome with twitching ragdoll effects, unfortunately. And there's such a rewarding slow motion kill shot that never gets old as I watch some scruffy one-eyed bungler get his one remaining tooth blown out of the back of his head, and then to get the shock of your life and realise this ain't just mano a mano as you suddenly get swarmed by a herd of zombies.
Fucking hell! Where the fuck did you come from?
We've got concoctions to drink to gain advantages, we can recruit companions, which definitely comes in handy in drawing fire and dishing some damage out, as well as managing their inventories. I did enjoy rolling into a camp armed to the teeth with my posse and obliterating everyone in sight with them, but not all your companions will come out of the other side smelling of roses, and the importance of them perma-dying is kind of shrugged off by the developer's tutorial early on, advising not to worry if one of your posse gets his head blown off. You and the rest of your posse can replace them by just taking your pick from the best looking hotshot in the nearest saloon.
What about that?
Don't just do that.
Well, come
I
on,
knew you were
why
gonna
not?
do that. 'Cause why are you going to him? That's like reverse affirmative action, dude. You don't want to do that. You could cheat yourself out of a good slave here, man.
How do you know he's not going to be a good slave, Charlie?
Come on.
But know that later into the game you can recruit the main characters as your companions, and they too can be wiped from the story for good. Gunslinging isn't always your best course of action, as with Prey and Dishonored, stealth can really be your best friend and the environment can always come into play too. Now, if you're a big fan of cowboys with zero regard for health and safety, then you'll be right at home with plenty of convenient and dangerously placed explosive barrels.
When you say barrels, you mean barrels?
Barrels, man.
You can boot an explosive barrel at a group of enemies, as well as throwing items to distract them or slapping the arse of a nearby horse to see it run off and have them chase after it. It's never as simple as it first seems though, because the enemies are easily affected by the slightest change in the environment, and their walking patterns are huge and so diverse that simply waiting for them to do a lap of the path that they're taking isn't always an option. You've got to seize the opportunities while thinking on your toes. There's a sense of randomness to the world, with so many factors at play changing how things will play out. Previous encounters with NPCs can come to your rescue if you've helped them out, and if you've built a bad rep for yourself, they can even come to bury you beneath the snakes further down the line. This all adds such a nice dynamic feel to each and every scenario, making it all round so enjoyable and far less predictable than most games that try to balance stealth with action. There's no restrictions to the way you play, there's no overly stealth focused areas or overly combat focused areas. It's totally balanced options and the choices are yours to make. Speaking of choices, they all feel so genuinely tangible and intertwined with one another, rather than being so badly camouflaged behind a script like a lot of games tend to do these days. And that rings even truer when I realised that I could just go around murdering anyone I wanted, and that's going to impact your story as you'd expect. It could change your posse's opinion of you to the point where they may even return to put an end to you and your brutish crimes, and it could even land you some jail time. At the end of each chapter, you'll be presented with a very Dishonored style presentation of all your right and wrongdoings throughout the chapter you've just finished, and these features always tease me into replaying the level to play through the level again and experience things a little differently next time round. The game's day and night cycle is done pretty well and really diversifies how you can interact with the world, like certain events taking place and shops being closed at night but still available for picking the loot clean if you can find your way in. This also applies to the stealth, as you'd imagine, becoming less visible in the shadows and easier to spot during the day. Interacting stealthily with the environment isn't as simple as just covering your tracks by hiding a body in a bush, though you can do that, but if you've got a shovel you can even bury your enemies, and with that same shovel you can dig up another body to do a little nighttime grave robbing at the risk of lowering your rep. The weather can play a part too, with rain changing the status effects of you, the enemies, and even animals. The RPG systems at play are pretty strong too, with character dependent perks and abilities which can be upgraded by finding these things called nymph relics in your abilities and gold aces of spades for your perks. This was a nice touch because having hidden lootables instead of XP can punish the more stealthier playstyles that are going for that non-lethal playthrough. Between characters your perks carry over, but their main abilities won't, with them being unique to each character. Your weapons and vests are upgradable and rarity based, with stats to sift through, and they can also be broken down for parts, and animal skins can be hunted down, as well as nuggets and ingots for crafting some of those vital upgrades. And just like Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, there's this board game style overworld that we can track through, and right from the get-go you can go anywhere you want, and some areas are substantially harder than other areas, and that's probably just to persuade you away from them, but you know that's not going to stop you renegade mental bastards now, is it? Now, travelling is automatic rather than being physically controlled by the player, but new locations can be discovered, random encounters like being attacked or finding a travelling merchant can happen, you can change your path while you're on your way to somewhere, you can set up camp to cook some of your meats to heal up, and you can even ride a stolen horse or buy one if you've the funds to quickly travel the west, which is cool because time is ticking as you're travelling, because some of the side quests are timed and are constantly at risk of expiring. The side quests are pretty equal to the main quests in terms of overall feel of their importance, because again, they're all told through text, except some of these side quests, as well as the odd optional task within a main quest, are time-based that eventually expire as well. The same goes for the available bounties. These are also timed and only offer extra cash for those moments when you're totally strapped. Oh, and if you like checking off side quests, then make sure not to progress through to the next character's chapter, because you'll leave the side quests behind. There is a shed load of looting to be done, which I always love and struggle to resist checking every single possible container in any game, and this does lead to the obvious inventory management issues which can be frustrating, especially seeing as I was packing a full inventory pretty early on in the game. There's a safe to deposit your goods though, and you can fill the pockets of your companions, which can take the edge off, and if you've managed to pay for a horse, it too can also increase your inventory space. Graphically, it's nice enough, and those of you who saw my Tiny Tina's Wonderlands review will note I'm a huge fan of cell shading, hand-drawn art style, because I feel this art style always ages well, and even though there's a lack of that next-gen polish with the game being built with the PS4 and Xbox One in mind, the art style still looks nice. In terms of bugs, it was pretty smooth experience. Once or twice there was an NPC or an enemy freezing, and their animations are a little jarring when changing their actions. Performance-wise, it was solidly above 80 FPS with max settings at 4K 4K on a 3090. Before even playing Weird West, I was hyped just knowing who's making it, and their signature game style has felt really strong throughout, and I was surprised to see how well it translates over to an isometric game. Now it's out on PS4, Xbox One, PC and Game Pass with a next gen version planned for later this year. Now I want to know what you guys think. Would you have preferred to have seen them stick to the original Prey and Dishonored formula of a first person shooter, or are you pleased to see this new change in style? It's interesting and it's worked in my opinion. But anyway, if you've enjoyed the video, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.